Welcome to the Cracking the Growth Code podcast, where we explore practical growth and leadership insights to take you and your organization to the next level. I'm your host, Matt Zembruski, and I'm pleased to have as my guest today, Stacey Ackerman. Stacey is a partner at Navigate Agile, a consultancy that transforms marketing departments to Agile. She's well known as a thought leader in the Agile software and marketing communities, and for a decade, she's successfully transformed traditionally run companies into culture and teams that embrace agility. She's a regular contributor on Agile marketing for MarTech and Forbes Coaches Council, and speaks at global Agile conferences, including multiple years at the popular Global Scrum Gathering. Stacey, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Matt, for having me on today.
I'm really excited to pick your brain, Stacey. You have such great experience from where you are. You and I are a little bit familiar with each other, but for our audience, let's just jump right in. And can you take a moment just to introduce you, your company, your role to our listeners? Let them know what you're up to, what you're really passionate about.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a partner at Navigate Agile, and we specialize in working with marketing companies and marketing agencies to get them to become more agile and embrace agility. And we helped found the Agile Marketing Navigator framework, which was really exciting. That launched in 2021, and we found great success with adoption of that. And right now, we're really passionate about the agency side of things. That's a new launch in 2024 that we're working on, and teaching agencies how they can incorporate Agile, both internally and then with their clients, because so many agencies, when companies go Agile, they may lose their agency contract because the agency isn't on board. So that's a passion area right now, too.
That's exciting. That's really exciting. I want to delve into marketing as well. And let's bring in the concept of leadership, because I know there's a lot of questions that we're always getting, at our company about how can an individual grow and become a stronger leader, really bring out their best as a leader. So let's talk about leadership for a minute. Like, first of all, how would you define leadership when it comes to an organization or a marketing organization that you work with?
Yeah, I think a good leader has a really strong vision, and they're able to get others on board to that vision. So they're really leading a vision, whether that's a change or a goal, or just a culture. They're part of that. And I think a leader also is about improving people and really improving their team and their skills, and not knowing everything and embracing the fact that they don't know everything, that they hire smart people who know things, and that they can also learn from them.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And there's because it is about developing people, and it's about having a strong vision. I mean, a few of the things you just mentioned, I want to double click in a little more and go a little deeper there. So when it comes to in my background's more on the strict technology side of Agile professional and development teams, software delivery teams, a lot of that with high tech. That's a lot more my background. And with the marketing lens on it, because marketing, I work with marketing organizations too, and it's always, well, how do we do Agile? What do we do? So when it comes to talk a little bit about the vision for how key, the leader, I'd imagine that the leaders that you're working with who are heading up agencies or marketing departments, et cetera, I imagine that they have a pretty strong vision and they have a pretty good growth mindset because they're open to look at an Agile model or frameworks for proceeding. So talk a little bit about that, about the way the leaders think when it comes to Agile and how they sort of put their vision out and how Agile relates to delivering on that vision.
Yeah, well, I've worked in software too, and just like in software, there are good leaders and there are bad leaders in marketing as well. And so the ones that I've seen that have done this really well, I call them like the cheerleaders, right? They're enthusiastic, they're excited about this change. They don't dictate the change, but they ask questions of the team. They ask for ideas. They're in it together, and they're modeling the behaviors that they want to see changed. Of course, then on the opposite side, I've seen some really bad leaders who have the great vision, but they don't actually want to change. So it's kind of like my New Year's goal of losing 20 pounds, but I haven't changed anything I've done. So I'm still weighing 20 pounds too much. So I've seen those kind of leaders as well. And that's not good, right? They like it conceptually, but then they don't do the work that's needed, or they don't change their behavior. So I think as Agile coaching professionals, it's really up to us to try to work with leaders, especially to say, how are you supposed to behave in this context? I did have one leader recently that the leader that was a good champion delegated it to another leader, and this leader would go around her team saying, I don't know, this isn't going to work. And so you really need that person on board and to fully understand the vision.
Yeah, it's that's cool. And I want to hear more of your stories, because there's so much to the individual uniqueness of each individual, and the people dynamics, how it comes into, and bringing out. You mentioned about the leader being able to lead by example, essentially, and embody what they're saying, like have their words and their actions be, aligned and in harmony, right? To really be authentic in that in that respect. So when you talk about, I want to drill in more into some of like the teams or groups of teams, like in the marketing organizations and agencies that you've worked with. What have you? Let's shift over to like Agile and Agile leadership just for a little bit. What have you seen to be some of the key success factors in the teams, organizations, or maybe leaders, as you're like when your company is getting engaged, and when you're helping a company transform and accelerate and so forth? What do you see as some of the key success factors as they're on their transformational journey? Like what really sets them up for success? What are some of the things that you look for?
Yeah, I think it's a leader from the top, essentially with a strong vision, and that they don't communicate that vision once. Like that is everywhere all the time, right? That's good communication. And why are we doing this, right? Not just we're doing this. Why do we need to do this change? Why do we need to do it now? What makes us need to work differently? And really getting that middle layer of leadership on board with that as well, so that message is trickling down. So those are some of the positive things that I've seen happen. And then them really living out, those Agile values that we talk about. So not being overly authoritative when we're saying we're not trying to make an authoritarian culture, right? And so some of the better Agile teams I've seen have had almost a lot of freedom, right? So I've seen one leader that said, here's an experimental team, and this is at a healthcare company with really strict rules that's very traditional. And they said, you're here just to experiment, go for it, try new platforms, try whatever you want. And they were going out, and if they didn't find the right people on their team, they were finding agencies to partner with that could help them. So they had all this autonomy to experiment and then to bring it back to the rest of the organization and share what they had learned. So those have been some good successes.
What was that? Because I've seen that work very well. And I know you have as well, which probably just strict tech companies for your background too. When you see that type of an innovation sprint, or the ability to just go do whatever you want. I know at Google for a while, I don't know if they're still doing it, but like one day a week, it was like whatever you want to do, just start building something, call it a hackathon, call it, innovation time, whatever you want. And imagine that example that you just gave, there were some interesting outcomes that came out of that. When you give that much autonomy and empowerment to a squad, did you notice that they were able to sort of level up or think out of the box?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So while the rest of the company was still really, really slow to deliver, I mean, they were just on fire. They were, getting things out the door all of the time. When they didn't have the right skill set, they had that autonomy to just go, like I said, bring in the right agency partner versus waiting, for an external team within the company. So that was really cool. But one of the better things that they did was they learned what didn't work. And sometimes we forget that learning what doesn't work is almost more valuable than learning what works. So they started experimenting with new social media platforms and that the company would never normally allow. And they went, oh, doesn't work, abandon mission. So I thought those were really cool things that I noticed them do.
That's fun. I give a lot of credit to the leadership of the company to be able to be open to that and to allow that type of empowerment, especially in such a regulated industry.
Yeah, you don't see it very often.
You don't. Let's shift over and talk about some of the personnel that get hired, whether they're contractors or full-time employees and things like that. I just want to talk about hiring for a minute. When you're hiring someone new to join your company, or whether you're involved with the hiring process with one of your client companies, what are the top 3 attributes that you look for in a candidate that's really going to help fuel the transformation there and move them more towards success?
Well, for me, number 1 is a good communicator, right? You have to be good at communicating verbally and being articulate and being able to speak to every level of the company and not be afraid to do that. Being able to really be that people person also who can understand those soft skills and those cues on a team. So I think those things are super important, as well as even written communication, right? Being able to just kind of get that message across. So I think that's really important. My number 2 is someone who actually knows the craft. So as we know in Agile, it's become a really flooded marketplace with a lot of people going and getting their CSMs and getting hired, but really only understanding some textbook level Agile. And especially in marketing, they will balk at textbook Agile for sure. So you have to be very pragmatic and understand what Agile is trying to accomplish, not the rules of Agile, and how you can work kind of within their existing framework and puzzle and disrupt without overly disrupting, right, to move things forward. And so that's really key. And my third one would be a self-starter, right? In this business, every situation is different. So you need to hire people that can just jump into the unknown and figure things out without having to ask a lot of questions, and that really aren't afraid to fail. So I think that's important too.
Oh, those are great examples. To clarify on the second one, when you said know their craft, you talking about marketing or Agile or both, or?
Yeah, I was referring probably more to Agile, but I mean, if you're hiring a marketer, you want them to know their craft as well. So yeah, but I think in Agile specifically, just because there is a lot of fake Agile out there, right? There's a lot of surface level Agile. And so by knowing their craft, it's like, no, knowing not what it's just supposed to do or the ceremonies of Scrum, but knowing how you change behaviors and things like that.
Yeah, there's so much there, and I'm very passionate myself about the soft skills, all the things that are not on the resume. They're tough to find or see until you're like this, one-on-one in a conversation, right? Then you can start to evoke some of the truth behind the resume, or even some of the things that are not on the resume. What are, to that point, what are some of the what are 1 or 2 of your favorite questions that you ask candidates, or you'd recommend that your clients would ask candidates in order to evoke those aspects that you just talked about?
Yeah, so I'll be honest, when I am interviewing people, I usually have a list of questions and never ask any of them. And part of the reason for that is I want to see who they really are. And I want to keep it pretty casual and just have a conversation, because I think that truth comes out when you're just sitting there having coffee and being real. So I find interview questions, people answer what they think you want to hear.
Very, very true. Very true. My son's graduating college this year, and he went to his first in-person interview. It was like a second or third interview yesterday. And he came back and he prepared like crazy for it. He was super prepared. But he came back, he said, wow, that was actually easier than being on Zoom, because instead of having this transactional answer questions, and he said, I was just hanging out with all these people. He had like several half-hour one-on-one interviews in a row. And he says it was just talking, getting to know people, and also answering questions. But it wasn't as, I don't know, robotic or two-dimensional as like a Zoom interview. when you're in person, there's a lot more there. So it's funny, you and I think, have similar interview styles, Stacey, because I do the same thing. I have a list of questions, but once we get into the conversation, I want to get to the truth. Like, what are their real motivations? What are they really excited about? Would they be a good fit? Because every interview is a two-way street, right? You want the company to want the candidate, but you want the candidate to want the company too, ideally.
Yeah.
And if one or the other is not a match, well, there's not a match there. You have to find a better match.
True. Yeah.
No, that's good. I want to ask, what do you see in the marketing space? There's a lot happening. There's a lot happening with the term agile and transformations. And you and I have been in the industry for a while. And my sense, as well as talking with some others, I'm curious what your thought is. What do you see as some of the things that are happening industry-wise, where there might be sort of a reinvention of terms or roles or anything like that? What are your thoughts on that? Because there's a little bit of I think coming out of 2023, what I've seen is there's a little bit of a slowdown, or I don't know, maybe the coolness or the hype factor of agile has come down a little bit. So it's more of, we still need the people, we still need to do the right work.
Mm-hmm.
We might be saying it a little differently. We might be changing wording and things like that. What are your thoughts on where the industry is going with agile, maybe as it relates to the marketing clients you have, or just in general?
Yeah, I 1,000% agree with you. And in fact, I was at the Global Scrum Gathering in Amsterdam in October, and we had that same conversation with a panel of like 8 of us from around the world. And that's a hot topic right now. What we're definitely hearing is Agile. Yeah, it's kind of on that, it's not at the height of the moment, particularly in the software space. And there's a lot of erasing Agile from the terminology and just calling it what it is, which is probably not a bad thing necessarily, because it started to become kind of a commodity. And what we're really looking for is change. So I'm seeing a lot of things out there that are calling like change consulting, organizational change leadership, that type of thing. I don't think in marketing it's a bad word yet, because they're still on that kind of early adoption part of the journey where software is kind of on the downslope. So it's not bad. I would say it's become a little less of a priority once ChatGPT was launched, because now all of a sudden that's where everyone is kind of shifting their focus and quite frankly freaking out in marketing and worried about job replacements and how do we learn this? How's it going to impact us? So that's had I think phenomenal effect probably on both marketing and IT, and they kind of cross paths now anyways in digital. So that's what I'm seeing. Would you say the same, Matt?
Yeah, I would definitely say the same. The first I've been waiting for the Scrum Master term for a couple of years now to get rebranded. And the first company, I won't name the company, but a large organization is starting to call Scrum Masters Scrum Leads. Mm-hmm. So that's one. And also a candidate that we placed. I said, "What's your ideal role called?" And she's been around a while. She's an Agile coach, Scrum Master, all these different roles. And she said, "You know what?" She wanted to work at a small company. She says, "I'd really like to be the Scrum lead at a small company, so I can work with leadership. I can work with the teams." And she said, "I'd like to be called the Scrum lead." So it's interesting. That's one thing that I heard. But I've the same general aspect that you talked about with Global Scrum Gathering. I was at a more localized one. Jeff Sutherland, a few other folks were there in the Boston area around November timeframe, and it was the same thing. It's like, well, what do we talk about when we go in to do agile transformations, and are we and the general sense was that we're still doing the same type of work. Mm-hmm. But we're not like, hey, we're going to go in and do a 2-week sprint and we're going to do the retro. We're not using as much terminology. It's more of like, hey, we just finished delivery of that. Let's stop and have a meeting to discuss on that, right? And things like that. So instead of leading with all the agile terms, your behavior is still the same. Like we're still focused on change and transformation and adapting agilely as quickly as you can to the pace of change. So I've seen a lot of the same. A lot of other agile professionals who I've talked with recently are sort of waiting. They're in the sort of wait and see mode. Like some people I know who are professional trainers in the agile and scrum space, and they're like, I don't know what's going to happen. Where are we going? Do we have to like rebrand our materials and that type of stuff? The more textbook engaged agile professionals, I think, are a little bit more sensitive to the topic right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it is interesting, the Scrum Master name change. So in our Agile Marketing Navigator framework, we did a lot of iterating with CMOs and clients and everything to come up with that. And we actually did change that word to Agile Champion. Scrum Master was not accepted as a role whatsoever within marketing, and it still is not as a one-on-one team role. I mean, marketers are just not going to pay for one person per team to do what a typical Scrum Master does, but they might bring in someone called an Agile Champion, which probably same as a coach, right? Where they might be leading Agile within marketing. So that's the terminology that we use. And most of our framework is a change in terminology because we wanted it to resonate with marketers. So it isn't necessarily conceptually changing anything. It's changing it to brand it to what they do and what makes sense to them.
That makes a lot of sense. Let's talk about AI for a minute because you're hitting, we're talking about some really important trends right now. If someone watches this 5 years from now, probably won't be as exciting. But you mentioned about the marketing organization, and this is true across a lot of industries now. AI is here. Is it going to take my job? How do I do it? I view from an opportunity perspective, there's a lot of opportunity for people, and I see this in technology every day. Some of the people are embracing the AI technology, saying, how can I use the latest AI technology to supercharge my role or to contribute more value to my organization versus, oh, it's going to do what I did yesterday, so now I'm out of a job. So what are your thoughts there from a marketing perspective? Like, how can the individuals in the marketing teams or leaders take better advantage or take good advantage of the AI tools and technology? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'll be honest. I mean, I'm kind of one of those skeptics a little bit too, but I realize it's not going anywhere. So we need to like get on board with it. And my business partner every day, he's like, you need to use AI more. You need to use AI more. And I've been a little bit of a laggard in that area myself. But I do believe, it can work. And I'm thinking mainly content marketing because content marketers, and I do a lot of content marketing myself. It's a little bit scary, right? Well, AI is going to replace me. And I've seen on LinkedIn that AI is actually generating most of their articles and that they're then asking for experts to contribute and comment on the article, but it's AI pulling things in. So I think in content marketing, AI can really help ideate topics, maybe give some outline ideas, but I don't think it should replace a writer. I think you still need that human touch, but it can definitely help with that brainstorming process.
Yeah, I fully agree. I look at it, and I don't know if I don't know if the rest of the industry would agree with me on this, but I see actually AI as a tremendous opportunity for all of us, as long as we have a growth mindset and we're committed to learning and growing, because then we can adapt and grow our role and our ability to deliver value. And to give you an example, like in the recruiting and staffing world, it's completely changed, like up until AI and now with AI, everything's hyper digital. Like when people want to apply to a role that you would put out there for a marketing lead or what have you, you're getting like hundreds and hundreds of resumes come in. And you don't know, number one, if any of the resumes are real, fake resumes, whatever. You don't know that until you get to the interview. So how do you find a good candidate in there? I mean, you really need the human factor. And both my parents were human resources their whole careers. So I sort of grew up in this type of household. And from my perspective, is keeping the human factor in marketing teams, tech teams, recruiting and staffing is absolutely critical because at the end of the day, we're humans interacting with humans. And AI doesn't know how to simulate all the soft side of us, right? The hard side, yeah, they can read all the books that have been out there ever, and they can rewrite, a song in Mick Jagger's voice or whatever, and they can do all sorts of different things. But when it comes to delivering real value, again, humans delivering value to other humans with companies and marketing teams, et cetera, I view I see it as a partnership with humans and AI. Before it was just humans, but now humans and AI, and they're sort of in as our partner. But you can't do one without the other. Like if you're a human without AI, you're going to run probably slower, especially in the next several years. But if you're AI without the human, you're not going to, the humans who have experience are going to be able to see that. Like you can see through that. You look at the LinkedIn articles. Okay, you can see that's just AI generated stuff. But if there's a human with real experience and real thought that contributes, you know what those contributions look like, and they look different. They read different, right?
Yeah, and marketing in the last few years has really been about personalization, and AI can't really do that, right? I mean, so it does take that human if you want to do personalization.
Yeah, it's also from an agile perspective. I know you and I were always in the industry. You think about fast feedback loops, right? So fast feedback. A human can interpret the feedback from another human a lot better than the AI can, right? The AI can read all the books and can give you textbook responses, like to the interview questions, like you said. Here's the 10 interview questions I want to ask. The AI can do a great job answering those from a textbook perspective. But if one answer goes a little bit sideways, and then you ask the question differently, now it's human to human having that conversation, like you said, to get to the truth. Where is this person really a self-starter or not, right? That type of thing.
Yeah. And I honestly still think, most people get hired by who they know, not what they know. And it's all about networking, and that's going to in-person conferences and going to meetups and doing those real things, because you might have 10,000 followers on LinkedIn, but do you really know any of them? So
exactly.
You'll remember the people that you had an in-person conversation with.
Yeah, very, very true. And that's one of the reasons why I started the podcast, so I could have more of these conversations. I found, and I'm guessing that you see the same thing when you're invited to a panel session or a presentation, or even a small group like on Zoom, say 40 marketing professionals around the country, and they just have questions for you. They really value your perspective, your experience, your on the street, like, scars and battle wounds that you've had over the years. They appreciate that. I mean, I've seen that. Have you seen the same thing from your interactions with groups of people?
Yeah, they want to hear your real stories, right? I mean,
Yeah.
And I try when I'm writing blogs or articles to try to be authentic and real, right? And sometimes it's easy to be too textbooky, but yeah, people want that human side.
Yeah, the stories I think people bond with. Well, as we wrap up, I want to bring it back into to leadership, but we can also keep it general if you want. I want to just sort of wrap up with a question: is what are your top 3 tips that you'd recommend to a lot of our listeners, are current and future leaders? So what are your top 3 tips that you would have to the current and future leaders in the agile space out there today, that you'd like them to think about and embrace as they go forward in their careers?
Well, first of all, embrace change, right? Change is inevitable, and we can fear change or we can embrace change. So the more as a leader that you can embrace change, and make change happen to this quick changing world, it's going to be better for you. My number 2 thing is, as a leader, you don't always have to be right. I think for people of probably my generation, your generation, we're used to that command and control leader that always had to be right or always had to know the right answer. And thankfully that's kind of going away, but it's really about embracing your team and embracing people's ideas at any level, and that you don't have to have all the answers. And you don't have to pretend you have all the answers when you don't. So, and I think modeling the behavior you want to see in others. So you can't expect your employees to act a certain way if you don't do it yourself. So it's kind of like parenting. They watch your every move, and whether you know it or not. So.
Very true, very true. And that reminds me of my favorite quote probably of all time is Gandhi: "Be the change you wish to see in the world." And it's so powerful. It's a simple quote, but like you said, that's one of the tips. You got to keep that in mind. You can't just say one thing and do another.
Right.
Those are great. Those are great tips. And embrace change and model it and just be authentic, right? With the way that you're approaching. I like that a lot. Well, Stacey, as we wrap up, I really want to say thank you very much for your time, for your energy, all your insights that you shared today. They're really valuable. I can't wait to get feedback from our listeners and our viewers to get their feedback on this. So thanks again for coming on the team and helping all our listeners and viewers, crack the growth code.
Thanks for having me, Matt. It was a pleasure.